From the earliest moments of his ministry, Jesus reads a scroll in the synagogue, and then immediately they try to throw him off of a cliff. The Jesus, though, preached in the modern pulpit today would have never been killed. You know, I was watching a clip from the Grammys a couple weeks ago. In the clip, an artist named Jelly Roll was thanking the Lord, thanking Jesus for changing his life. I took it to be sincere. I'm not talking about what he was saying. However, in the clip, while Jelly Roll is thanking God and thanking Jesus for changing his life, the camera pans to other artists and celebrities in the room, including Reba. Reba is throwing her hands together, clapping, while Jelly Roll is saying, Jesus can change your life. You know, the thing is, Reba, who claims to be a Christian, who thanks God for her success, she is one of the most active and loud voices in support of the LGBTQ plus community in America today. She is referred to as a gay icon. Even a couple years ago, when there was the anti-drag legislation in Nashville, she was the loudest voice against it and says, God bless those men if they want to wear high heels. The thing is, Reba's version of Jesus is most definitely not the Jesus revealed in the Bible. Jesus is very clear. God made them male and female, Matthew 19:4. And I want you to understand something. Because sometimes even when that happens, you might say, well, the contemporary tide against Christianity seems to be changing. The wind might be at our backs once again. There is nothing to hate about Reba's version of Jesus. That version of Jesus has nothing to do with authority over your life. He doesn't define morality, sexuality, ethics, origin, destiny. That version of Jesus swims in the tide of contemporary culture and adapts and integrates into whatever version of him you desire.
To that age-appropriate question and to what we want to invest in for our culture, I guess I look at some of the books that we're seeing commonly implemented in our libraries. We see, I actually went this morning and found This Book is Gay from some of our local libraries. Many of the libraries that testified here today do have it in stock on their shelves, recommended in the teen section as young as 12 years old. And this book, among other things, it recommends to young children how to flirt in gay bars. It recommends to children how to enter into non-consensual sexual relationships. And I'll read here. Oral sex is popping another dude's peen in your mouth or indeed popping yours and his. There's only one way, hard and fast rule when it comes to blowjobs. Watch the teeth. And then it goes on to say that letting any guy come in your mouth is safe sex.
Okay.
No.
Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Oh, this isn't appropriate for this committee?
We don't need to read items that actually, it's not the things that you're reading that are inappropriate. You got your clippable moment. Maybe we can just move on.
It just seems absurd that this is appropriate for a 12-year-old, but not for the senators in this committee. But I will take it.
Wow. All right. Full disclosure, I actually did not watch that whole clip until just now. I am floored. Michelle, how is this okay for 12-year-olds?
Not appropriate for 12-year-olds. Really, from a Christian perspective, it's not okay for any year-olds. This is adult content. And the fact that over and over again, Moms for Liberty was critical in that, where they kept over and over and over again reading these out loud, and the grown folks were like, oh no, my ears, my delicate ears, we're going to save that for the 5-year-olds. Right? That's exactly how they're treating us. No, this is for the kids. This is only for the kids. It's only for a drag queen story hour that we're going to read those books. The absurdity of that, it's disgusting. It's demonic. It is evil. It is an attack on our children. It is grooming intentionally to destroy generation after generation in every possible means. So I kudos on him. I encourage every legislator, every parent, keep pulling those books, keep reading those books out loud. Do not let them get away with it. Because if the presidency changes, trust and believe they will fill those libraries up with even more. And it's becoming more extreme than it even is now. How sick.
Yeah. how did we get here, Terrace? How did we get here?
Well, the spirit has always existed, right? Perversion, you can go back into ancient times and whatnot, but I will say in modern times or in our lifetime, I will say that when President Obama anointed this movement many years ago, when he said that it was okay for men to be with men, women to be with women, and so on, I tell you what, the very first thing, the ink wasn't even dry on that paper, and they started attacking believers. They started attacking a Christian baker out west somewhere, and now they wanted to attack a lot of known Christian organizations like Chick-fil-A or Hobby Lobby or whatever. And so and then churches, just think about this. I mean, this same movement is attacking pregnancy centers, that help mothers who are expecting children. They start defacing those and calling people evil. There was a woman that I saw her documentary that she did time in prison, as a result of being outside of a pregnancy center and praying for the people, or actually a Planned Parenthood, and was actually praying for people. And so she actually did time in prison. So this is where we are. But I truly believe that President Obama played a major role in really anointing this movement to emboldening it to get to this point. And so, but I have to commend also in Dearborn, Michigan. I don't know if you all had saw that, but in Dearborn, Michigan, there were Muslims there. It's a highly Muslim area with Arabs and so on. But they showed up to a school board meeting as well and pushed back against that nonsense. And so it was kind of ironic to see Rashida Tlaib on the State of the Union address, trying to, shout out back against the president when she was not on the front line of that issue, even in her own hometown of Dearborn, in that Dearborn area. And so, but it was clear that Muslims and Christians obviously could, agree on one thing for sure, that don't target our kids. Jesus said this, he said it would be better for him that they had a millstone hung around their neck and cast into the depths of the sea than to offend one of these little ones. And so that's what we're seeing. But unfortunately, there's some leaders in this country that have anointed them and emboldened them to do so.
Yeah, this is insane. And as you mentioned very well, we are supposed to protect the children, protect their innocence. Like you mentioned also in Proverbs 22:6, train up a child in the way he should go. This is for the parents. Parents are supposed to be the arbiter and the leader of the moral guidance for these children. And these books, it's like they want to take away these children's innocence.
True.
And give them adult characteristics and adult sort of decisions. This is what it seems like they're leading them towards. It's sick. It really is.
I like We Watch YouTube made a comment on granting, the authors to write these things. So I'm wondering at what point, because, if you're in possession of child pornography or something that's inappropriate, at what point are we going to stop and say these authors are writing child pornographic books that are fictitious maybe, or that are, they are not getting away with this. This was my personal life experience. These are not all autobiographies. Okay.
That's right.
You intentionally writing pornographic material about children being abused by adults, to me, that should be a criminal offense. We need to start looking at these authors right now and start targeting. This is not just free speech, because we are talking about you. If you had an image of this happening in real life, you'd go to prison, you'd go to jail, you'd be arrested. But since you're allowed to draw in a cartoony way or make it sound fun and use bright colors, then that makes it okay. And you're selling it and peddling it to children. So we need some legislators that are willing to get in there and create these new laws to say enough is enough and stop emboldening really these probably pedophilia related or, just really evil authors. They have to be stopped too.
Well, and unfortunately, a lot of these books don't just, grow legs and walk into a library or a school. Somebody is approving that, right? And so a lot of times it's your school boards or whatever, but sometimes it's the administration of that school. And you're absolutely right. This is pedophilia, so the LGBTQ community, it is the hotbed for pedophilia. This is where pedophiles hide because they know they're at the bottom of the rung, and so they hide amongst people like that. I've had the experience of working with that population of students at a place called Star Commonwealth in Albion, Michigan. And these were students, young men to be exact, that had been offended at some point in their lives, and they had also offended others. And it gets as wild as, them also offending the family pet, and so it gets that extreme. So it is a spiritual thing. And so it's something that you have to really go to war for spiritually, because that's really where the battle is taking place. And so it's really unfortunate, but let's not forget this same movement was wanting to change or get the public to stop calling them pedophiles. Instead, they are minor attracted persons. That's how they want it to be referred to. It's like, no, you're a pedophile, and you need some help, you need deliverance, and you should repent, and so that's where we as believers should stand on any activity of this nature. And so we should never tolerate that at all.
Absolutely. We have a super chatter here. Butterbean, thank you so much for your $20 super chat. Says, isn't God just so awesome? Right people in his time. Lord, let us as a nation return back to you. Absolutely. Yes, yeah. Indeed. Thank you so much, Butterbean. We appreciate you folks. As you come in, hit that like button. It helps to get this video out in front of a wider audience. And also your super chats go a long way in helping keeping us online. Thank you so much. All right. So we're talking about standards and about what's appropriate, what's age appropriate, and who gets to decide. But when you normalize identity confusion as something, sacred, when you teach children that disagreement is violence, and when you frame parental correction as oppression, you create the type of environment that we have going on now. And that leads us to what this next tragic news story. So newly released footage shows Julia Egler, the transgender teen convicted of murdering her mother and her mother's boyfriend in 2024, explaining that she was angry because her mother misgendered her. Okay, so let's be clear about this. Nothing excuses violence or murder, but look, folks. What happens when a culture tells emotionally fragile teens that disagreement about identity is abuse? It's this. Take a look. This is clip 4.
Now, as the interview continues, Julia describes frequent arguments with her mother, Kelly McCullum, particularly about her gender identity. And she tells detectives that she felt misgendered at home. And she says that the issue was brought up repeatedly during fights.
Well, me and her would have a lot of arguments about things, especially over me being trans. So she'd be like, okay, you're not a real boy and blah, 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 and all, the whole spiel of transphobic stuff. Okay. But
she doesn't approve of your lifestyle, she doesn't approve of that.
Would you say that she was trying to kind of meet me in the middle, but it wasn't really working all that well all the time. She would try to call me child instead of, because it's more gender neutral rather than kind of meeting in the middle, I guess.
Okay. So, I could tell obviously this frustrated you. Is this a root of a lot of the arguments? Or does it maybe not the root, or ends up being brought up in these arguments?
It's a thing that was brought up a lot in arguments.
Is she misgendering you?
Yeah.
So when you guys are arguing, is she intentionally, calling you she, or not using the appropriate pronouns, or not referring to you as Jasper and referring to you as Julia?
Wow. So in other words, she's saying this misgendering is violence. So if a teen is already struggling emotionally, that message, it can cause some type of resentment. This is crazy. Terrace, what are your thoughts here?
Well, this one, really strikes close to home, because it's interesting you mentioned in the last segment about Gretchen Whitmer, and I have to applaud her for at least acknowledging what the president has done thus far. But just a few short years ago, the left was actually in the majority in the state of Michigan, and they actually passed a law in the state of Michigan that made it illegal to misgender someone in the state of Michigan, punishable by a fine or even some years in jail. And so So I'm sure if you sent this clip to her and her crew, they might, I don't know, it might not even affect them at all anyway. But these are the types of things that's going on. I also recall my time at the Heritage Foundation. We brought in a Hispanic American mother from the state of California. Her daughter was also being, groomed and whatnot, and in school, and they had her believing that she was a boy, and unfortunately, because the mother and the family did not go along with this foolishness, the daughter was removed from the home and placed into foster care. And then, long story short, as a result of her being in foster care, we found out that this young lady who was believing that she was identifying as a boy, she committed suicide. She walked out in front of a train, taking her life. And, very sad situation. There was not a dry eye in the auditorium at the Heritage Foundation at that time, because the mother said that when they called her to go identify her daughter, she said when she got on the scene, she could see them pulling the flesh of her daughter off the front of the train. And so, again, when the president say that these people are crazy, he, that's putting it politely, and why the people of God on the left who say they are do not speak out against this nonsense is beyond me. And so, and again, when you have people that are in high ranks like that are in elected positions, Supreme Court justice not long ago, when she was being, questioned of what a woman is, she could not even give you the answer of what a woman is. And so, but these are the people that are really pushing this ideology on these children, and they're okay with that. And so, but they'll have God to answer to at some point in time.
Yeah. And it feels like, Michelle, more and more people are affirming this type of stuff. I mean, we just had not just clergy, not just government, even, people who are said to be Christians out front. Yolanda Adams, she's a big time singer. She just came out a couple weeks ago, advocating for LGBTQ and all this type of stuff and the trans movement. I mean, what is going on?
Well, I want to be sensitive because that was a tragedy that happened. And we know that for the people in the community, those kids, this entire trans, this is confusion. We know that the word says that God is not the author of confusion. So this has been since the beginning of time. This is demonic from the beginning of time to throw in confusion. Now, this confusion is also about sexual sin, which is one of the very few things that is condemned outright, that is mentioned outright as one of those traps that will make you fall. So there's two part, but I would say the enemy knows how to use it, but this is Marxism. This is a part of their plan.
That's right.
This is how it's literally written. I've got the book on my shelf. You can read about how we first separate and break apart the family. So again, this goes back to education. And Terrace, I know you understand. So when we started that education, we started pulling kids out and putting them into the public educational system and creating that system where parents were not in charge of their children for the majority of their children's day, i.e. the majority of their lives growing up. Then we got to the 80s, the 90s, especially 2000s, where we took it a step further now that we'd gotten through those two generations in Marxism content and changing laws little by little. And then we started to separate them completely and say, well, your parents aren't really in charge, are they? You are. You can call the police on your parents for not only physical abuse, which I agree, if something's happening, report it, but mental abuse. And then what is mental abuse? And then we've kind of gone to where now mental abuse is for your mom that delivered a child who was born a female to say, I'm really a boy. No, you are a girl. So now we've said that's abuse. And states have enacted, to your point, laws like California, where not only that, if you don't affirm it, we'll pull you out of the home and give you to a parent who agrees or give you to a foster care system. Know that Joy, in one of our chats, they were talking about they wouldn't have made it through the 80s or 90s. And I'm going to tell you right now on the light side, my children wouldn't make it through the nows. I have to mess around and find out and then think come to my house and take me out first. You had better pray. You better know that I'm a firm believer, but I will take you out. You will have a Lazarus moment. I will resurrect you. And I will personally put you in jail. So I'm the wrong mom. My children know I had 3 boys and 3 girls, and they don't mess around. They know firmly that I rule the home My husband is the head of the household. This is biblical standards. You can take your Marxism and do what you want in the world, and I'm coming for the world to fight back. That's why we're running for offices here. But also Christianity, no, we better stand firm. We better call this out. So this is evil, but my kids know. They do not want to find out. They know exactly who they are. They know that there's a godly spouse, a wife or a husband waiting for them. And if not, it's going to be when they're 18 and they move out.
Yeah.
Because I'm going to call you by your name, and don't let me call you by your full name. You don't even want the middle name in my house.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. I 100% agree. I 100% agree there. We gotta, it goes back to the family, as you mentioned. And I know, Terrace, you do a lot in the community talking about family, and we've seen a big decline, a big distortion, perversion of the family. And I think that's the root cause to a lot of what we're seeing with these identity issues and other issues.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I do believe, again, the Bible said, if you smite the shepherd, the sheep will scatter. In other words, if you take the head off, in other words, if you remove that father, the body's sure to die. And that's exactly, again, like what Michelle was saying, it ties right into Marxism. It literally guides that. I mean, that's the manifesto, that is the plot, that is the scheme, take the head out of the way, and then the body is sure to die along the way. And so that's exactly what's happening to our families. And so that's why at Project 21, we're excited because we have this fatherhood monograph that's coming out pretty soon. It's going to be up for publishing pretty soon, and we'll get it printed out and get it to you guys so that way we can come back and you can maybe share it on here. But we're excited about this because it literally taps into fatherhood and family formation and the importance of, families being, being the center of everything that God had intended for it to be for our children. And so anyway, more to come on that, but I look forward to sharing that with you guys when we get it.
This is Christian Conservative. I'm KJ with Michelle Talkington.